Okay, I want to talk about this clip between Ben Shapiro and Megyn Kelly, which I think is the best representation of the Shapiro-right, or whatever you want to call that section of the conservative party. Small, limited conservatism, small government, limited conservatism, very constitutional literalist, free traders, and generally supportive of strong American military actions overseas, or generally the idea that America should be loud and proud on the world stage, not only in support of, for example, Ukraine, which Ben Shapiro is supportive of, even though he's much more quiet back in 23 and 24 when when it wasn't that popular and he couldn't get much bona fides for talking about it, but also in Israel, which has been one of the bigger sticking points between him and other conservatives on the right. But his recent scuffle seems to have been primarily with the Nick Fuentes section of the party, as he came out and he critiqued Tucker Carlson for giving Nick Fuentes a what I would call flattering interview. And when I say a flattering interview, what I mean is that during that interview, Tucker Carlson would generally avoid very difficult questions that could throw any of Nick Fuentes' record into moral disrepute. He was not throwing at him quotes of the more disgusting things he said about him wanting a lack of women's participation in politics, what he has said about interracial relationships and comparing, people in interracial relationships to people having intercourse with animals, or any of the things that would make him not welcome in polite society, and made it a scandal when Donald Trump had a meeting with him as he was having talks with the Kanye campaign. And Nick Fuentes was, when Kanye West was going on the Crusade Against Jews tour, he was his campaign manager. And so Ben Shapiro was not, did not take kindly to this type of interview, where anytime Nick Fuentes, even in the interview itself, said something so ridiculous, so on its face contradictory to the basic tenets of conservatism, Tucker Carlson would just kind of avoid it and give that weird laugh that he gives, and that was it, as if his goal was to make sure that Nick Fuentes' fans stuck around after the interview, less make sure that he actually does decent journalism. And this, I think, is noteworthy, considering that Tucker Carlson was the largest TV host in American politics for years on Fox before he was taken off the network after the $850 million libel decision against Fox. Here is one clip to show you, I think, just the general problem with Tucker Carlson interviews, just his inability to confront people on the nonsense that they say, if he believes that it could help him either financially or help bring people to his audience. And that is when Nick Fuentes gives Joseph Stalin, the Soviet dictator that Tucker Carlson usually compares his opponents to, when he talks about him favorably, look how Tucker reacts.
So it was like late December. It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh,
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was an admirer, but we don't need to go into that, I guess.
Well, that's okay. Let's get back to it. We'll circle back to that.
It was weird because the reason I mentioned that, it was almost like, because I woke up that day and I was like, oh, it's December 18th. And I was just like very acutely aware of like, today's like a strange day. This is the day that the attempt happened.
They did not circle back to that question. They did not circle back to whether Stalin was a good guy deserving of fandom. Just avoided it entirely. I think the worst example of this is when Tucker Carlson interviewed Aleksandr Dugin, who is a Russian philosopher who wrote books like books on geopolitics that called for inciting race war in the United States so Russia could come back onto the global stage as a predominant superpower where they could territorially conquer their neighbors, and that he believed that the only way to achieve this was by getting Americans to have so much internal division that they start shooting each other. One suggestion he made was race war, but I don't necessarily know if it had to be race war, just the idea that the destabilization of the United States and the support of internal conflict in the United States is in Russia's material interest, is something that Russia should pursue. And considering his ties to a lot of American extremist politicians on the left and right, from people like Caleb Maupin to Lauren Southern to others, it's not crazy to see that, this is something that he really believes in. This is something that he wants to see the extremities of American politics succeed, even though Lauren Southern's Canadian, and he wants to see Americans come to blow with each other. And in this interview that Tucker had with him, he doesn't mention his book, The Foundations of Geopolitics, where he mentions these things, even though it's a book, like he mentions his books, but he doesn't talk about what's in the book. He just talks about him as an author, but doesn't talk about what he wrote about, and allows Aleksandr Dugin to kind of guide the conversation in a way where he came off as kind of a reasonable philosopher who had his daughter just victimized by the Kiev regime, while Amazon won't sell his books for who knows what reason. And so these type of fawning interviews for Russian fascists and American fascists rubbed Ben Shapiro the wrong way. Now, whether or not this got worse due to Nick Fuentes' distaste for Israel and constant attacks of Israel, or whether this got more intense due to Nick Fuentes' personal experiences or history of anti-Semitism, I do not know. But this class of political figure has run the ire of Ben Shapiro's Ring of the Party for a while. Not only for reposting anti-Israel content and pushing anti-Israel content, not only due to like some levels of acceptance of anti-Semitism, not only due to the pushing of foreign governments' propaganda, namely the Russians. Jack Posobiec, Candace Owens has republished the content of Russian disinformation outlets designed to increase tensions, racial tensions in the United States, but also when it comes to recent tragic events within conservatism being exploited for attention, which he brings up in reference to Candace Owens in this back and forth with Megyn Kelly, where Megyn Kelly seems somewhat uncomfortable with the conversation that's going on, and she seems at one point to try to talk over Ben, as if to try to maybe even get away from the conversation entirely, as Ben asks her why she doesn't take a stance on this.
For example, Candace Owens. I think that what Candace Owens is doing right now is evil. It is evil what she is doing right now. Okay, and I say that again.
But what? Because like I didn't opine on whether it's evil or not, but my position is it's really none of my business. And
why is it? But I have a question. Why is it none of your business? I mean, you comment on these things for a living.
I'm not mother of the internet.
No, but if this were on the left and somebody were accusing Charlie Kirk of his wife having murdered him, I assume that you would be talking about it.
Is that what Candace is accusing Erica of?
Yes.
Of murdering her own husband?
She's accusing TPUSA insiders and other members of the right wing, including Seth Dillon, of being involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk. Yes.
Okay. Like I said, I don't take in that content, which is an honest statement. I don't have time to watch Candace's show.
I believe you. But the point that I'm making is that when
what I understand
friendship should not, in our business, I think it's important. Listen, friendship should not trump.
We don't even know each other.
I understand, but even with Tucker, friendship should not trump our manifest requirement to speak out when people do and say things that are both detrimental to conservatism and morally wrong.
Okay, so I don't totally disagree, but I think the way of handling that, at least for me, is much different. So I saw things.
So this is interesting on a few levels. Number one, Megyn Kelly seems to not really want to engage in this at all. She seems to want to avoid talking about it. She seemed to really be aghast, like really completely surprised by what Candace had said. And then once that had been confirmed, after saying, "Oh, I don't want to pass moral judgment," it was like, "Oh, well, and it just seems like we're just moving away from it." So Megyn Kelly's uncomfortability with taking like a strong stance on this is strange. And Ben Shapiro pointed out, I think, the clearest example of why it's strange. Do we really think that if tomorrow on CNN there was somebody who speculated that Erica Kirk tried to assassinate and successfully killed her husband, or that TPUSA conservative insiders had done it? If it was on CNN, MSNBC, or let's say it was a high-profile politician like Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, or any of the people around them, or a sitting U.S. senator or representative, or Pod Save America, if we wanted to make it another podcaster, if they had said something like this, would Megyn Kelly have treated it with, well, I'm not the mother of the internet. Well, this is not deserving of my attention. oh, this is not the type of stuff I delve into. Or when it was all said and done, what she said, that's not how I would handle it. See, Ben Shapiro came out and made a really, really big post where he railed into Nick Fuentes, railed into Tucker Carlson's platforming of Nick Fuentes, railed into Candace Owens, railed into this coalition of, I don't know if you would say a coalition, but what we'd say this fringe of the right-wing movement that has grown in size when it comes to their audiences, but has not reformed their rhetoric at all. In fact, they found by going further to the right, they can actually garner more attention, they can garner more viewership. And for people like Nick Fuentes, I believe that's also where their politics is. So they have an audience, that's where their politics is, and they stand on it. But a lot of those stances are contradictory to conservative values, and some of them are just flat out lies, as Candace Owens has engaged in a lot of lies. For example, making and saying she would bet her political career on Emmanuel Macron's wife being a man. Making such bold claims that once rejected should make you go into hiding, should make you not want to show your face in public. Saying such things that were proven to be so false and to be such a bold lie that I would be embarrassed to go into a room because I would just be scared that people would bring it up. Scared that people would bring up something that I had bet my credibility on. Why couldn't people just say I am uncredible past that point? But now that it's moved on past that towards conspiracies that, again, garner large viewership. The only time I hear about Candace Owens is when she is saying crazy stuff like Emmanuel Macron's wife is a man and I'm willing to go to court to prove it. And then the court proved it wasn't right, that she wasn't wrong. I mean, that she was wrong. Going as far as to have Emmanuel Macron's wife submit pictures to a court to prove that she is a biological woman. And now it's big lies about the death of Charlie Kirk, one of the most high-profile political assassinations in our country's modern history, in order to get attention, in order to garner attention. And the question is standing on the graves of somebody that, Candace Owens claims to be her friend and is somebody that is friends with many people in the conservative movement, well, no figure in the conservative movement, which has now evolved what I would say is now the image of a conservative martyr. You see him on murals, you see him talked about in church, you see AI renderings of him talking in church and to follow God. He has turned into a martyr for the conservative movement, with many conservatives even saying that he is going to fuel the movement to new heights, getting a ton of donations and attention to Turning Point USA, his legacy organization now. For her to do that, of course it's going to ruffle feathers. So of course she's going to get pushback. I'm just honestly surprised that it took so long. But considering the type of rally around the flag mentality that many would have around election time, maybe it isn't too surprising. And I could say, like, there are conservatives who are really upset about this back and forth clashing. I don't know if I checked in for like a second on the Rob Noor podcast on his show, and he was furious. He was absolutely furious about this. My goodness, I wonder if we can actually, if I can find this to give you the tenor of not only how many on the base are feeling right now after Republicans got crushed in the elections, but in this being the type of conversations that's going on in the fallout of Republicans getting crushed in the elections.
That's the big story. And then we lose. Who would have thought? It doesn't matter if you think they're garbage or not. The left wants to kill you. Well, I don't like the fact that Tucker Carlson talked to Nick Fuentes. The dude running for attorney general in Virginia, I don't know if you knew this, he says he wants Republicans' children to die. That's what he wants. Now, we saw what they did to Charlie Kirk. We saw tens of thousands of people cheered on. Not one prominent Democrat, other than John Fetterman that I know of, said that they would refuse to endorse this guy. What's your comment on it? Well, I don't particularly like Nick Fuentes. I don't know why Tucker's platforming you. Right, but back to the Democrats that want you dead. Yeah, I just don't get the Nick Fuentes thing. I don't get it. And what is Candace Owens saying? Okay. Well done. Whoa, you really moved the needle there. Fuentes also wants Republicans to die if they're in the wrong race. I guess we should really highlight that when he runs for attorney general, huh? Oh, wait, what's that? He's not? Oh, well, let's focus on that instead of, the Democrats in positions of power. Good shit. See, I keep hearing this. Rob, we could do both things. We could fight Nick, and we could fight the Democrats. Rob, we could do both things. We could work at home to lower prices, and we could fund Ukraine. Sure, we could do that. How'd that work out yesterday? Doing both.
We're funding Ukraine? Are we doing that again? Was I uninformed? My goodness, am I putting on my MAGA hat?
Things. How'd it work? Well, Nick still went on Tucker and got interviewed, and your fight against him did jack shit, and Republicans lost. Well done. You guys did it. You did both things very well. Good job. Yep, you're right. You can do both things, or neither, which is what happened. Matt Walsh had it right. After Charlie Kirk, I don't give a fuck. I'll work for Nick Fuentes. I'll work with this. Fuck Nick Fuentes if he decides that he's going to be divisive. Fuck Tucker Carlson if he's going to decide he's going to be divisive. Fuck Mark Levin. Fuck Ben Shapiro. Fuck all of them. I don't care, though. That's not my focus. My focus is I'll work with Scott Pressler. I'll work with Nick Fuentes. I'll work with Matt Walsh. I'll work with Ben Shapiro. I don't give a fuck. Win! And then do something. The more Republican, if you really hate Nick Fuentes, stop fucking talking about him. Nick goes out and Tucker Carlson. People.
Man, I gotta say, man, Rob's not boring to watch. I never watch Rob, and I'm particularly bored. Which I gotta say, fantastic asset as a political content creator. Man, he is energetic about this. Look, I would say that there is a reason as to why a movement would want to distance itself from the likes of Nick Fuentes. Now, Tucker Carlson isn't a Republican senator, isn't a sitting Republican House member. He is now a podcaster, no longer the top name in broadcast television for commentary and news, if you would call what he did news. So I don't know how much the right has this conversation to begin with. But if he was to should Nick Fuentes be welcome to do, for example, canvassing efforts for sitting Republican senators? Should Trump be having press conferences with young Republicans and have Nick Fuentes there doing a funny little dance? If it means more Republicans in the base, more youth participating in canvassing, fundraising, etc., is it worth it? Despite the fact that the reputational hit Republicans would take from associating with somebody who called race mixing having sex with an animal, or who has talked about whether or not women should be able to participate in politics, at the same time where women broke hard for Democrats in the last election, young women in particular, and helped win Democrats in Virginia, helped win Democrats in New Jersey, helped win Democrats in Connecticut, in Georgia, and anywhere Democrats won in Pennsylvania. When we talk about the courts, young women, but women generally, won them W's. Is that something that Donald Trump wants, especially if it's going to, Laura Loomer already causes the president enough problems. And she has a lot less clips of her saying crazy stuff, even though plenty, on the internet. And somehow has probably said things not as reprehensible as Nick Fuentes, though she has. Does some pretty reprehensible things. And has done some pretty stupid things. I would say she's sillier than Nick Fuentes. She's more ridiculous on the face of it than Nick Fuentes. But there's a risk when you associate with these types of people. It's why Mamdani, when Hassan Piker, and not to compare Nick Fuentes to Hassan Piker, they're the different things that they've done that are PR or unworthy or very, very different when it comes to the 9/11 statement versus what Nick has said about 9/11. But when he went to the Mamdani party, he was not welcomed into the upper echelons, into the VIP section. They said, you're not on the list. And what did he do at that party? He started saying it's bad that the USSR fell. something that should have maybe be checked with the citizens of the USSR in Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Belarus, like all these other countries that maybe were, when it actually did fall, due to all the problems that, you know, were rotting the USSR from the inside out, whether they asked them. But that distancing was made for a reason. So there's a question of just strategy, but there's also the question that Ben put forward. Is this the type of stuff that conservatism should be related with? And should it be that you look to your left and you look to your right in conservatism and you just see a bunch of people who don't really care about the First Amendment? Whether or not you go after somebody's broadcast license, or whether or not somebody gets deported because of what they said, or whether or not, Second Amendment rights apply to all people, isn't really a strong underpinning value. But then what is the foundation for your movement? What is the foundation for your party? If you don't build your party on something that's stable and stays somewhat consistent, then, I mean, your party can be shifted around and twisted into things that maybe you did not originally intend. So I think that there are negatives to it outside of just the PR purposes. But man, he is energetic. I want to listen to a little bit more, actually.
The vast majority of the coverage that came from that was Republicans bitching about it, which then Democrats say, look what even Republicans are saying, how bad the Republican Party is getting. Congratulations. There you go. Now, there is a criticism of me, but right now I'm talking about Nick, telling people it was stupid to be talking about Nick instead of focusing on the left. And this big brain guy goes, but you're talking about him. Hey, so if you're giving advice to Republicans and say, hey, you should stop talking about Israel and focus on America first, this guy will go, you just talked about Israel. You just talked about Israel. You said not to talk about Israel, but you mentioned not talking about Israel, which is talking about Israel. You see? You see what you did? If you don't want them to talk about Israel, then you shouldn't talk about Israel and let them keep talking about Israel. You see how smart I am? Yeah.
He's doing a lot of clapping today. He really likes the clapping, Rob. Performer at heart. By the way, that's a crazy smile. That's not even like a happy or laughing smile. He's been driven to the brink a little bit here.
About Israel and let them keep talking about.
Because I've seen when somebody smiles because like you either smile like that because you're so scared that you're not scared anymore, right? I've seen that a few times. Or you're laughing like that because you're so mad your body doesn't know what else to do because you can't like punch something and you don't want to just start saying the stuff that might get you in trouble.
Israel, you see how smart I am? Yeah.
That's it right there. That's the smile I'm talking about. That's the laugh I'm talking about. The laugh of tension. Interesting discussions indeed.